Have a chat here. Fucking is what it is. Dominick Izzo out here in Chicago. Izzo Wing Chun channel. And for all the shit that we have been doing, I thought, you know what, why not start having conversations with some of the guys, content I've been reviewing, and we're going to do that today. So for, I won't have you sing the fucking awesome intro that you do on your video. It's dangerous. Ian, Ian from Inside Fighting Martial Arts channel on YouTube is joining me today. Appreciate you taking the time out. Give everybody a 360-degree view of who you are. You plug your channel. Let's have a conversation about martial arts today.
Sweet. Yeah. So the channel is pretty new. It's called Inside Fighting, but I've been doing martial arts my whole life since I'm a kid. Just really passionate about martial arts. I've had in my opinion, luck of training with some really, really good instructors who kind of early on changed my perspective of what fighting is, self-defense, martial arts. Really, really good background, Filipino martial arts, big background in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Sambo, Muay Thai. And yeah, lived all over the world, trained all over the world, and that's my story.
You got a lot of stuff going on. I found you you did a critique video on Wing Chun, and I thought it was probably the best video to criticize Wing Chun ever. And it kind of like, I saw it right when I was starting to get back into the passion of martial arts. Like I started my YouTube channel back in the first one 2010. And then I really started in 2012, took some time off because I just got so fucking disgusted with the martial arts community. And then I really fell into the troll trap years ago when people were like, oh, Wing Chun can't do this, or why doesn't it work in MMA and all this? And the emotion takes over so well that you're not able to form an argument. I watched your video and I'm like, I listened to every word you said. And I'm like, all right, the way that you presented it was so good that it allowed me to, without emotion, to respond to it. And it was one of my favorite review videos ever to do. So, I kind of want to dive head first into that because it's a Wing Chun channel. What was how did you created enemies with that video, or you could have created, you got a lot of agreements, which I loved in the comment section, but here's a martial art you're being critical on. Why, what made you go, all right, I got to talk about this? Cause here's what I think about it. And why were you unafraid to, get chewed up by us insane Wing Chun people?
Well, I'm never afraid to speak my mind. I've done it in different areas of my life, and it's had both good and bad results. I think there's a way to speak your mind. I think there's a humanizing way. Like you had just said, I wasn't trying to create conflict. I was just stating what I've seen. And I'll come at everything with the willingness to change my view. That's really important to me. So, a lot of what you said in your critique offered certain rebuttal to me that I could go analyze and look at and change certain perspectives of things I had previously believed. So I like putting myself in a position where people can challenge me and change what I believe. I love that. If I'm ever in an argument where someone can, or a debate where someone can actually change my perspective on something, that's a win for me. If I'm just, crushing the person, useless. So yeah, Wing Chun has always been interesting to me. I love martial arts. Like I said, I love all different types of martial arts. I love body mechanics behind martial arts. Martial arts in many ways saved my life during the toughest times that I've been through, and offered me a lot of tools to cope with certain things. We can get into that later. There's just a lot of stuff I've been through that martial arts really was a very important tool set for me. And so I have experience with Wing Chun. I was never big into Wing Chun, but I had a lot of friends who trained Wing Chun. I had trained, I helped teach Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in Dani Santos school, and he loves Wing Chun. Francis Fong used to come there. He used to do his seminars. Sifu Francis Fong. I hope I'm saying his name correctly. He's a very good martial artist. And so it's not that I'm completely blind to it. It was just what I had experienced in that style. And so I wanted to give not even a critique. There's a lot of good and a lot of things that I thought could just improve, and why not offer that out to the universe? And if people want to take it, they can take it. And if they don't, they can get angry, they can ignore it, they can do whatever they want with it.
You're really kind in the way you present it. You don't have to hold back at all. There's a lot of shitty Wing Chun out there. There really is. There's a lot of people who see Francis Fong's stuff, and who is Kevin is one of his top students. I think he's got his own martial arts channel. And Kevin did a collaboration video with another guy talking about it. There's training and there's application. And the Donnie Yen films, the Ip Man movies that came out, I remember when those first came out, a bunch of us who were like, oh, this is going to put us on the map. It's going to put Wing Chun out there. And it did no good at all for the art. Robert Downey Jr., When he first came on the scene, he's like, I train Wing Chun, and we're like, oh my God, this is great. I wasn't too much of a fan that it was under Eric Oram and on a specific lineage, but this is going to be great. And it just never, no matter how much Wing Chun goes out there in the mainstream media, it does never do us a favor, because we do so much emphasis on how beautiful it looks that nobody talks about the reality that it's messy as shit. Bruce Lee is an idol in the martial arts world, and it's no secret I'm just not a fan of him. But I think he's one of the people that said bad kung fu looks really good in the movies, but is useless. And good kung fu looks horrible, but it's really useless. And that's exactly what people don't see. They want the bong sao, they want the pak sao, they want all this stuff. And it's so hard for a lot of us to kind of cage that emotion and be like, dude, you don't know what you're talking about when you're critiquing. Well, it doesn't work in MMA. And then we have the infamous, well, it's not supposed to work in MMA because it's a killing and maiming. We always have excuses for things. But again, I got to fall back on the way that you presented arguments. It's like, there was the first challenge I took where, all right, if I need to answer this guy's questions one by one, because if I can't, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about, and I shouldn't be teaching. So I'm the exact opposite of you. I don't like being challenged. I like putting my information out there, and it's not like I don't like to be challenged because I'm not confident. It's like I don't like to waste my time, right? I don't want to convince anybody of something, which is what most seemingly martial arts debates have turned into. I've just been involved with them way too long, and we always talk, and nobody ever really wants to put their money where their mouth is. So when it comes down to the debates, I'm done with them. But for some strange reason, it was probably your delivery. It was just you held your ground. What you didn't do is you didn't go, well, Wing Chun has got some stuff, but you didn't kiss Wing Chun's ass. You went after it. And I thought it was just an amazing opportunity for me to go, all right, do you really know what you're talking about? I'm asking myself that, and I put that video out there, and I thought it was one of the better contents I did in explaining the stuff, because you made me think about every answer possible, not to negate or counter what you're saying, but to acknowledge your argument and why your argument is valid, but have a reason why our stuff still works. So again, I thought it was awesome, and I think you need to do more content out there.
I appreciate that, man. Yeah, I'm constantly I'm really trying to grow the channel and everything like that. One of the things that I did like about your responses is that you didn't dismiss anything I was putting out there. You said, okay, this does exist as a problem, and how can we in the Wing Chun community correct it? You weren't defensive at all. Again, it was just a really nice exchange, and it allowed me to look at more of what you were doing in your methodology and how you're training and say, okay, there's a ton of value there. It's just a matter of, can people accept that throughout the community and say, these are things we're gonna take on. One of the things you said earlier, which is a huge part of my belief system for training, and I always tell people this, I started training when I was very young, and I had this belief that I could never beat my teacher. No, 15 guys on the street could never beat my teacher. You get caught up in like this mysticism of it all. And as I teach, one of the first thing I tell people whenever I'm teaching self-defense or close quarter combat is, fighting is statistics. The more unknown variables there are, the more the statistics become less conclusive. In other words, you take an MMA fighter who has a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, who's been training Muay Thai 20 years, put him in an MMA match against a guy who has no training, it's almost 100% in his favor. You put him in a street fight where he doesn't know the variables, he doesn't know if the guy has a weapon, he doesn't know the environment, he's not prepared for the fight, and the statistics change. And a lot of fighters have even talked about this. And so when someone breaks into their home, the fight's a lot different than they thought it would be, and so fighting is messy, and all the training in the world is to increase your statistical chances of success, but it's not a guarantee. And so that helped me drop my ego a lot when it comes to fighting. I always tell my students, you have a chance at beating me. Even if I have a higher chance today, you still have a chance. And so I feel like something that happens in the Wing Chun community is that, and in many martial arts, this is not exclusive to Wing Chun, there's a denial of that very reality, that fighting is so messy, so dirty, and you don't know what's going to happen, and your ego's at play, and you could just get cracked and lose in the most wild punch that is not a perfect straight punch, that is not a perfect hook. It's a wild haymaker that comes and cracks you, and you just lose, and that's all it is, and it's too bad for you. And you got to get over that hump, that reality, and then open yourself up to say, well, then how can I train as much as possible? to be open to these things so I can statistically improve myself in that situation as much as possible.
Nobody's talking about that. Not even me. I mean, I don't go into the depth of it that way. Why is it that we're at this day and age now where MMA, equal weight, equal size, equal skill set, defines what in a controlled environment that defines what a fight is? Why is it that I think the closest I come to your analogy is, yeah, well, can you do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in between two cars in a Chicago parking lot in the middle of winter when the ice is frozen all around and there's broken glass and bottles? That's it, right? But you went into a whole new level about variables that 100% do apply. Like I'm 47. I'm winded. I tell people all the time, the easiest way to beat me is outlast me. Within 10 seconds, guarantee you, I'm winded in a fight where I'm at right now. So that's how you'll beat me. But that being said, again, too, it's like that's a variable. Why are every argument's got to be show me an MMA? Show me an MMA.
So I have an answer to that. And I know what I'll say about variables is if I were to define confidence, I would say the person who has the most given options in any given situation will have more confidence in that situation. So the person who has trained ground fighting, the person who has trained with weapons, the person who has stress tested themselves and put themselves against reality in as many situations as possible, when a new situation arrives, they'll have what I call true confidence, not delusion, where some people are just delusional going into situations. But why people resort to MMA for a lot of things is because if Wing Chun and a lot of other traditional martial arts, and look, I'm guilty of this too. I love traditional martial arts as well. And one of the things is if we're on the traditional side, I'm also very much on the sports side, but if on the traditional side of things, the claim is that this is for self-defense, MMA is not the measure here, then there has to be more of a modern day evolution towards situational awareness. The training methodology has to adapt to our times. You know, if you want to make Wing Chun effective, if the techniques are effective for today, then train them, like you just said, between two cars where you can slip and feel that environment. Train them in a way that you start the class and nobody knows what's happening because they think the class is just regular, but there's a student who's going to be targeted today and two people just jump on him. They don't have to hurt him. I'm talking about in a controlled environment, make it safe, but there's ways to create that stress and pressure test and make it like it happens today on the street. And then you have a claim. Now I'm the self-defense guy because I'm doing what people are doing out there. But if you keep it hardcore traditional and you don't implement those other aspects, then where does it really fit in the world? Is it an MMA thing where it can help you beat people in a sport? Or is it a street effective thing where there's no evidence of either? Do you know what I mean?
It's a theorized school. It's just a continue. It's the mysticism, right? You're talking in Wing Chun. We do have that. You can never beat Sifu because there's tricks. And there's a ton of tricks, and Chi Sao is one of the biggest ones, and I can't stand it, where how you get your students to stay and continue to pay is you don't let them beat you. You don't let them beat you by always backing up. You know, you're absorbing that energy. To throw into that, one of the reasons I talk about Wing Chun is people go back to that myth that Wing Chun was created by a woman 400 years ago, and there's been studies that said, no, it wasn't. That turned out to be false. But if I go to China, even at 5'7", I'm going to be a very big man there. We're looking at the guys who created this art 300-400 years ago. Bruce Lee, 135. I'm almost 100 pounds heavier than he was. So how are we bringing that over into America where we're all bigger, faster, fatter, and then your tanda to the face isn't going to do what you think it did to a 130-pound person anymore? We have to evolve. And so many people are afraid to put MMA-style conditioning, training, strength training into play for that. And that's where traditional arts really, in my opinion, need to step up. Some of them are, but Wing Chun definitely is not.
Yep. And again, it's just everything. And I had said this in one of my videos. I think it might have been the Wing Chun one. And I really do believe this. I mean, you had a rebuttal to it. You said, you know, like Wing Chun is my style. It is my thing. I'm of the belief system that every single technique I learn, every tool set, every training methodology becomes a part of my game, and the extent to which it is a part of my game is completely dependent on how I test it. So for me, trapping, I love trapping, and people had always told me my whole life, you can, and I'm from a Filipino background, right? I don't have as much of a Wing Chun trapping style. I have more of a Filipino trapping style, panantukan, dirty boxing, all that stuff. And people had always told me, oh, it's too complicated. It's too hard to do. And I actually made this argument against Wing Chun. So I'm countering my own argument. I pull it off all the time in sparring against very high level Muay Thai guys. It's become a part of my game, but it became a part of my game because I worked so hard at making it a part of my game against other styles, against going out there and testing it. And then I knew, again, I had the confidence to say, I know now I can kind of read people in a way that I can pull these things off. And again, as opposed to just keeping it in the realm of the theoretical, where I never know if my application is actually going to work when a high stress situation occurs. So yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at with that end of things. But again, I do see a lot of value in a lot of the stuff you were talking about, Wing Chun, in terms of structure, in terms of how you apply it, in terms of getting there first, about, I don't know if you saw my video about stickiness, but like I'll hit and I'll be loose and I'll just keep hands in people's faces.
That's what it's supposed to be. That's exactly what it is.
And that goes a long way in a fight.
Oh,
the person who has their hand in your face, it's very hard to hit them. It's very hard to see them. It's very hard to do anything. It's uncomfortable.
That's almost. I did a video on what the straight blast is. It's almost the same concept of just putting something in somebody's face. It's 100%. I gave him credit for it, but that Dan the Wolfman, he displayed perfectly what a straight blast is from a Jeet Kune Do standpoint in a fighting application. It's getting something in somebody's face where they're annoyed with it, sensory overload. Talk about your journey. How'd you get started martial arts? What was the route that you went through? Did you do like taekwondo like all kids did, or what got you in passion for it? And then how'd you wind up here?
Well, my dad was big into Shotokan. He also had boxed and wrestled and done Aikido, and he kind of comes from an old school mentality where they trained Shotokan a lot differently than they do today. He's a tough guy. Like, he needed 2 hip replacements and was still deadlifting more than I can deadlift. They didn't understand how he was walking when he went into the hospital. So he's got a really kind of tough mentality. I very much look up to my father. He's a huge part of my life. And so I started getting into martial arts, and then I was exposed to 80s martial arts movies, and that became a huge thing. And back then there was no internet, so I got my information from movies and the library, and then where I could go train. Essentially, it was my school, the library, and my dad would buy me like Dim Mak books, and I believed it fully. I still have like my old Dim Mak book, and I was like, oh man, I better not apply this on people because they could die.
So we got to ask, who was what was the 80s? Like, mine was definitely Jeff Speakman. Jeff Speakman was the reason I got into Wing Chun, because I couldn't find a Kempo school out here. And Van Damme was a big one, but who were yours?
You name so Jeff Speakman for me, Perfect Weapon. Me and my brother became obsessed with that film. Oddly enough, Jeff Speakman, and till today, the martial art that I hold closest to my heart is Filipino martial arts. It's the martial art I've done the longest. I was very lucky to have a very practical instructor who really stressed certain reality-based aspects of training. He was the grandson of Kakoy Cañete, and he had a background in Yao Yan, trained the Filipino military, was a 5-time world champion in Philippines. Very tough guy. And I met him right when he moved from the Philippines. So it was me, my brother, and him. And there was one other guy there who left and came back, but it was for the first few years of training, it was pretty much privates. And I became obsessive. There's Jeff Speakman, and this movie I saw at my grandmother's house with this Filipino kid who had been doing stick fighting. When I was a little kid, I didn't know what it was. I didn't know it was Filipino martial arts. And then the day I went to the Filipino martial arts school, I'd actually gone there, another part of the story, to go train Wing Chun. I was going to check out a Wing Chun class. I heard sticks clacking next door. I went and watched it, and I was like, oh man, this is what I saw when I was a kid. And then Jeff Speakman used the sticks, and I was like, this is like Jeff Speakman.
Yeah, and it was in the store scene.
He breaks the thing, and then he has 2, and he's like going crazy and like, dude, I got the bell. And he made up that kata in the beginning. It's like an amalgamation of like
holy cow.
So,
Jeff Speaksman's from 2 towns over. I'm in
really?
Yeah, he's literally, well, he doesn't live here, but the road I live off of leads 2 towns over, right to Arlington Heights, Illinois.
Man, that's awesome. It was a dream of mine growing up to train Kempo. I couldn't find a Kempo school
Neither could I.
Until today. Yeah. Till today, though, I want to go do Kempo randomly. Just such an internal need for like melancholy purposes to just go train it.
Oh yeah, I would have to train with I think he's older, but Larry Tatum, who's a savage from that art. Those Kempo guys are pretty. I wouldn't, it doesn't matter if somebody says traditional art versus MMA. If you take a Jeff Speakman, if you take a Steven Seagal, if you take a Larry Tatum, I don't care who it is, I would never want to risk getting hit by one of them. You're talking about people who put in thousands and thousands of hours perfecting themselves. And if they land one hit, you're done. You're just done.
Yeah. People grossly underestimate. And there was an MMA coach I had a conversation once with, and he said something really interesting. He's like, I took we had a world champion in Taekwondo come in. And he's like, and the top strikers in that school were like, I'm going to knock him out. I'm going to do this. And he's like, that guy was landing the craziest kicks on everyone's head and pulling them short. And he's like, it's a whole different game when you're coming from MMA striking to a guy who has literally dedicated himself to just pulling off these kicks on your head. Sure, in an MMA match, they'll probably dominate him, take him down, pull off other stuff. But when you allow him to play his game, it's perfect. It is the perfection of what he is doing. It's the same thing. There was a Goju guy who punched me one time. His knuckle was so disgusting.
Dude, those guys are insane. You could never pay me. If somebody said I have a black belt in that art, that's the art of the guy that I used to work with who used to hit the heavy bag. And I swear to God, I'm like, he's kicking that thing. He would be hitting it with his fists, no gloves. And it sounds like thunder inside of our gym. Mm-hmm. Unbelievable.
So it's like, yeah, I don't care how much I train. Those guys are training equally hard, if not harder, for their entire lives, and they're training just one aspect of it. So if they pull off that one aspect, they're specialists. That's going to do a lot of damage. Even Sistema gets a lot of heat.
Yeah, yes.
But I've been punched by Sistema guys at that. Like, I actually went to my friend brought in a Sistema teacher just to hold a little seminar. I ended up tapping the guy out. He wanted to roll with me. I was tapping him out very easily on the ground, but when he punched me, it was like,
they've got that relaxation. Yeah, they've got that relaxation down pat.
Man, it was the craziest feeling. And it felt like a deep muscle bruise for weeks after. And I was like, that guy hits in a different way than I've ever felt before. And everyone has their thing. You know, it's like, and Wing Chun also, I felt when I trained with my buddy who did Wing Chun for a long time, when he parried, I don't know Wing Chun terms, I don't want to screw him up. When he would hit my arms to block or parry, I felt it, and I'm very well conditioned, but it was very boof, boof. It felt hard in a different way that I've experienced from other martial arts. So it's like everyone has their thing that their martial art gives them that they perfect. And it's like, there's this misconception of like, oh, well, you train karate? That's stupid. You train Wing Chun? That's stupid. I'm like, no, you get the right guy who's doing the right thing to you.
Who was the champion, maybe about within the last 10 years? Machado? I can't recall his name. He was a black belt. He was in MMA, and he was, and people watching would remember. I don't remember what his name was. His father was his sensei, and it was.
Yeah, you're talking about Lyoto Machida?
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's it.
Yeah.
I don't watch MMA that much, but yeah, he came from a traditional background. Do we think we need to discard traditional martial arts, or do they serve a purpose in the context of even sport fighting, or is it just discipline and air quotes self-defense and all that? Or can we see the traditional martial arts play a benefit in sport context and MMA?
One of the things that pisses me off the most about MMA guys, and I say this as an MMA guy, I was part of a team back in the day in New York. I mean, I'm, again, big combat sports guys. I competed in Sambo, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I love combat sports. So what I will say is that MMA guys deny something works until it's pulled off in an MMA match. And then all of a sudden it's the craze and it becomes so stupid. Anthony Pettis, for example, was doing crazy kicks, right? Taekwondo kicks that people had never seen before in MMA at that level. And all of a sudden Joe Rogan's like, wow, well, that kick is actually effective. It's like, what? So it only became effective today? Or the same thing with Lyoto Machida and Anderson Silva when they pulled off the front kick, and all of a sudden everyone's starting to try front kicking. And then you have guys now like Cheeto who just knocked out Frankie Edgar previously with a front kick. All of a sudden it becomes a staple in the sport. The biggest change in the sport is calf kicks, right? Calf kicks weren't used. Benson Henderson was the only guy doing this years ago. And I was always a fan of calf kicks. It was a big part of my striking game. And I'd always tell people you're safe in an MMA match if you can cover your head, you can protect your motor, and you can take out people's legs. And I like to kick at the calf and inside leg kicks above the knee. Those are my two targets primarily.
I could feel that it hurts.
Yeah, and then the more conditioned your shin is. So I had a game already developed for that. And everyone's like, it doesn't work. You can kick someone with the calf, stupid, kick them in the thigh. That's where Muay Thai kicks. All of a sudden today, it's like the number one thing in the sport. So the sport evolves based on what's popular at the time and what's being pulled off. A lot of that comes from traditional martial arts because MMA is a byproduct of traditional martial arts, trying to take whatever works in the sport and then say, well, now we're here. So it's constantly evolving based on those things. But the better the traditional martial artists coming into combat sports, the more they have an expertise, the more they'll contribute to the sport long-term, in my opinion, by giving new techniques. Like There's guys who are very good at capoeira who start pulling off really slick kicks. You know what I mean? All these things. So yeah, there's a huge place for traditional martial arts. There's a huge place for Wing Chun in MMA, in my opinion.
It
And there
lives
are
in
guys.
it lives in the clinch space, and that's what I'm not a fan of the oversimplification I talk about all the time. When I argue with, well, there's 5 ranges of contact, right? There's kicking range, punching range, elbow, kneeing, and I say there's one range. It's contact range. If somebody's, whatever they're contacting you, that's where that's at. I say too that I don't think Wing Chun should ever be somebody's first martial art. I got blessed. I spent so much time wrestling first, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu wasn't a thing when I left competitive wrestling. I felt that I was too short to box. There was, again, no real availability to box in my area because it was in the northwest suburbs of Chicago, and I wasn't about to drive to the city. And I fell into Wing Chun on accident, and it lived in wrestling space. I was like, this is me, because I'm tired of going down to the ground. I'm getting older, all this stuff. I live so comfortably in that grappling space, or the Wing Chun space, because, again, the illusion that Wing Chun people think they have is they're going to get in, they're going to do 2-3 movements, punch somebody, and that's it. They don't understand. Most people, and you can see this online, they could take 2, 3, 10 hits, they're still standing. So most fights that are not MMA and they're in the street will resort to people grabbing. And they're going to grab your clothing, grab your wrist. That's where Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu just wound up excelling, because that's where a fight lives. Most guys, well, they posture in a bar fight and they go to grab the wrists, because those wrists, and now you can't hit me. So, I lived in that space for a long time. That's why my Wing Chun, I'm very proud of it and I'm very secure of it. But I don't know. I don't know how else. Too many other people who can articulate the need to translate Wing Chun into the needs of where MMA would fit, or to supplement it, without the whole world going, well, now you're doing Jeet Kune Do. See, and then it takes you to a whole other argument I get pissed off at. So that's why I'm just happy teaching Wing Chun and fuck everything else. I just get so pissed.
Listen, you know what I realized for myself is, and this was the recent realization of coming back to Filipino martial arts, because I'd kind of taken a little break from it to focus more on sport fighting for a long time. There was a while there where I really wanted to train for like Wekaf, and I'd done like the Dog Brothers style sparring a lot. In my teacher, it's interesting, like the Dog Brothers, all the credit in the world to them, but a lot of Filipino guys were doing that. Like, it wasn't a Dog Brothers school where I was training. It was a Filipino Dosia Para school. We trained with just the headgear, no hand protection, no nothing. Your fingers would be busted. So that was back in the day. Now I see with his students, he's grown to school, he does use more protection, my old teacher. But back then, that's how it was. I mean, so what I will say about this, and in my recent return to Filipino martial arts, is everybody's body, or their soul, or their spirit, whatever it is, some biological factor, has a natural inclination to certain movement and appreciation of certain movement and love of certain movement. Now, that might be Wing Chun style body mechanics for some people, it might be wrestling for some people, it might be Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for some people, it might be boxing for some people. There are certain body mechanics that people just feel better than others. And it's a journey to find that for yourself. And there could be guys who train Wing Chun for 10 years and hate it, and then go find another martial art like boxing. And for some reason, the mechanics behind punching and boxing and the way they cover and everything just works for them, not even in a necessarily practical way, it just feels right. And for some people, it might be the opposite, and they find Wing Chun. In the end of the day, I think people should seek that out. I never try and change a student of mine's natural body mechanics. I try and move their natural body mechanics into a place where, again, it'll bring them statistically safer in a street confrontation. Meaning that if their natural inclination is to kind of like loop more and do weird things more, and they're a little bit quirky, I'll try and develop a quirky style for them that at least upon some kind of reflexive thing happening where someone punches them, they're at least hugging their head, and then maybe they're throwing these loopy punches so that their head is covered. So using your natural body responses in a way that it feels good for you, and then developing a game around that, in my opinion, or a style around that, is very important. The rigidity sometimes in traditional martial arts, all of them have a lot of rigidity because they wanted to prove they were the best, maybe, and they needed to keep a structural system so that it would be maintained, and the history of it and the movement sometimes loses the adaptation of someone else's body type. You know what I mean? I can go learn Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu from a 300-pound guy with tons of muscle on him. He will fight differently than me, or I can go learn it from someone who's more my type, my body style, my flexibility, and they will naturally have a game that I absorb better. And it's super important. It's not to say the other guy can't teach me, but the way I move naturally is the way I should train to some extent.
You are beyond accurate in your argument, because I've said that for years with Wing Chun centerline theory. How does a 300-pound I'm not even 300 pounds, but how, after years of being sedentary, does my tight shoulders, tight lats, big chest, how can I get my elbow back? Your elbow's got to be on center line. Can't do it. Can't do it anymore. Oh, then you don't have Wing Chun. How are you going to tell that to a person who's got other physical problems? How are you going to tell that to just bigger people? So that's 100% accurate on that. When you went from training to being competitive into teaching, where was your mindset when you were first at, like, all right, I think I'm going to start teaching? Was there any hesitation? Did you just jump right into it? Were you encouraged? Did you meet any resistance? Because that was a really great journey when I started teaching. I'm always curious of the people. All right, it's time for you to start passing on what you know. What was it like?
So again, the first schools I started teaching at was Filipino martial arts. He started having me assistant teach and help out. And he had always been demonstrating on me for many years before. And I had also started branching out into other styles at that point, getting a feel for different things. And at first, the first time I taught a class, I was nervous that, again, it's just a confidence thing because I hadn't done it before. Am I good enough to be teaching people or showing people things? But I was teaching a beginner's class, and the fundamentals were so ingrained in me at that point that the second I started doing it, I was like, oh, I've been doing this for so long. Now I'm just translating it. The biggest lesson the first time I taught was when I had to correct other people. I had started really learning the techniques for myself in a different way. And I think that's really, teaching makes you better.
Yep.
Better than anything, actually. I would say that teaching in many ways is often better than training. Across the board for every martial art I've ever taught, whether it's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Filipino martial arts, striking styles, I always learn certain things seeing other people make mistakes. And I go, do I do that? Do I move like that? Why is there the opening? And then you get a kind of voyeuristic view of two people fighting, and you see the openings, you see the mistakes, you learn more. So that was my big lesson. That's
why I said when you did that video, and I have finally had a chance, instead of to just fire back some emotional, trolling retort, with the way you presented all of your arguments for why Wing Chun, isn't effective, doesn't work. That's not what you said. It made me go, all right, I have to teach this now. And it was so much different of a lesson to teach because there's no physical person in front of me. I kind of got that passion from that video saying, all right, now, we do a lot of theorizing in Wing Chun. We do a lot of talking and this and that, but it's always on the, all right, if this happens, then do this. But what about just having a conversation with it? So it's really odd you mentioned that, because my Wing Chun may have been the last 25 years, but I just went up another rung in the ladder after responding to your video, because now I started to see things different than I had been doing over the last several years. YouTube. The YouTube craze and phenomenon, everybody wants them to teach. Why did you go the YouTube route? And you have a good mixture of, you didn't do anything amateur. You went in full force. You got a little mix of humor in there. You got some great professional look at videos and great content. Why did you decide to go that route?
Well, YouTube, I think, is a good platform. Number one, I just kind of wanted to get it out to people and be able to put it out in long form, not like a quick TikTok thing. I like discussions. I like really looking into things, and I'm a curious person. So I was hoping, it was for selfish purposes, I was hoping that people would respond and that I could start having conversations like this about martial arts. Again, there's not many things in life that make me feel excited or make me feel happy, and fighting is one of them. And a lot of people look down on fighting. I don't want to fight on the street. I have no interest in hurting people, and I have no interest in hurting people when I spar, but I love sparring. It's a huge part of what makes me feel present in life and kind of allows me to disengage from all the stuff that's going on in my life. And so there's one of the things is that kind of made me want to start the YouTube channels. I do have an autoimmune disease. It's been harder and harder to train. I still train. I still spar a lot. I still do everything I can do. But if there's a point in my life where I can't do that anymore, I want to have outlets to talk about my love for martial arts and continue doing it in any way I can, in any capacity. So whatever limits me, this is a great avenue now, I think, YouTube, for me to be able to keep expressing my views on martial arts. And again, I think it's a good platform, long form, where I would have never met you and talked to you had I not done it. So yeah, I mean, that was pretty much it. I didn't really have a long-term thought. I'm just kind of a joker a bit a lot of the time.
The humor is great, but I also wonder, is there more to your background? I don't know, are you right-brained or left-brained? Because you're very pragmatic when you deliver the content without being dry and boring. So, I mean, there's got to be something that I don't know what else you did in your background that may have helped to this, but
acting. Yeah, I acted for many years. I was on Walking Dead for a few seasons. I was in a bunch of TV shows. Yeah, I've been in if you look up Elon Mualem right there, you'll see on IMDb. There's a lot of, but I don't think it's that. I think it's honestly, again, when people are passionate about the thing they're talking about. And again, I'm not passionate in a way that I have to prove I'm the best. When I was younger, I was kind of like that. I was very competitive. Now I just really just love the exploration of it. And I'm really happy I got to that place.
You've got a good balance to where you're not arrogant like I am, right? And I know I'm very aware of I'm arrogant, but again, too, you don't have it to where you're not arrogant, but I wouldn't come to your school to try to test you either. So you do have that really good balance of you're open-minded, you're critical without being insultive, and then you're very skilled. So whatever you're doing, I mean, I'm going to pay you compliments. So I told you, I want to get you on here because I really want, there's people like you and some others that I've come across over the last several years, or the last several months that I'm like, man, I want to elevate your channels because you guys are not at the level that you should be. I got blessed with a great following. I want to share that like crazy with a bunch of you guys. Talk about the future, about where you're going. Are you ever going to maybe try and take on another training? Would you ever dip into Wing Chun more? Or what's your channel going to wind up be doing? But where's the future going to be held for you?
What I'd really love to do is, and I'm going to start doing this next year. I'm going to travel as like my health improves now. I'm just getting over something recent. And then once I'm back 100%, I really want to start traveling and I have a buddy who loves doing videography. So he wants to come visit schools like yours and just, meet, do some videos of what you guys are doing, look into it, show some techniques, really break it down, kind of make it like a martial arts journey show where it's exploring different styles. I used to love Fight Quest. There was Human Weapon and there was Fight Quest. I loved Fight Quest, and I felt like those guys were really in it and they were willing to just.
Which one were those? Was that the football player and the other guy?
That's Human Weapon.
Okay, that's the one I saw.
Watch Fight Quest there was a guy who was a veteran, and he had a little bit of a boxing background, but not much of a martial arts background at all. Just so tough and a really good dude. And then there's Jimmy Smith, who was a martial artist, Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy. Not the best kicker at all. But they went and they just had an open mind and went and trained all these different styles, and they did it without ego. And then they competed hard at the end of that.
The guy Lenny Sly that I was with a couple years ago, we got approached by A&E, and we did an interview for them because they wanted another installment of that kind of stuff with weapons. So they wanted us to be hosts of weapons shows where we would travel and go around and talk about 16th century swords. And this, I think they liked our non-humble personalities. So, but that never went through.
Oh man, that would have been awesome.
Yeah.
That would have been so, but again, that's the type of stuff that these opportunities are created. I have a philosophy just from the acting background and everything is I like to create my own content. I want to have the power to do what I want to do and not wait on other people. I don't kind of want acting that whole world. I guess content creation as well sometimes can be a little bit parasitic in the sense that you're waiting on someone to give you the opportunity. When you're creating your own content, I would say, and you're not dependent on anyone, the end result, I don't care if 100 people see me or 1,000 people or 100,000. I'm putting it out into the world. And even if one person sees it and gets something good from it, it was all worth it. So there's this kind of need nowadays. I find a lot of people to have the biggest following possible. If I get a following, that's cool. If I don't, that's cool. I don't care. I just really want to have fun conversations. In the end of the day, I'm really doing it for myself to kind of put it out there. And I enjoy it. But yeah, man, I actually, it's so interesting when you reached out because I had watched your channel for many years, but I had watched it a long time ago. And then I had forgotten that I was not to put you down.
No, I took 5 years off. I took 5 years off.
So that might be it.
Yeah.
And I remembered liking your Wing Chun videos, but I had forgotten a lot of those lessons watching it because I had gone on, I trained with other people in Wing Chun. And that was where my opinion was. And then rewatching it, I was like, oh man, I used to watch this guy. I went back and watched some of the older videos and I was like, oh yeah, it's a different training methodology than a lot of other people who do Wing Chun. And I was like, I forgot that I actually really liked this guy's channel. I was so thankful that it was
yeah, I got burnt out with the Wing Chun community. I think it was 2017. I ran for office. I had a gym and I just closed everything. I'm like, I'm done with this shit. I was so pissed at the nonstop, incessant, everybody is an online warrior. It's just insane. And then I started to think, dude, you're getting older. And I was 37 at the time. And I'm like, you're getting older. You're going to take a beating at some point. And I'm like, and then you're going to give a beating because your ego doesn't stop. So I'm like, I don't, the person who kind of made a difference for me was, his name was Grant. He was a student of a guy named Dave Meadows, who passed away. And Dave Meadows has very limited resources on Wing Chun. He was under Duncan Leung, and so many people regard him of having one of the most savage lineages of Wing Chun out there. So I contact this guy Grant like 10 years ago. I'm like, dude, can I talk to you, do a video? And he's like, fuck all of you in Wing Chun. And he's like the only certified guy from that lineage. And he's a certified badass. And he's like, I want nothing to do with any of you. You're all a bunch of whiny fucking babies. And I'm like, okay. You know, it was just via a DM message on Facebook. And he was right. And I'm like, you know, and I pulled out of that, and like, I started being a little bit more critical lately of some of the stuff I don't like. And I always tell people it's my opinion, but then some of these cocksuckers just come right back in to pull me in. And I'm like, all right, you want my attention? Fine, I'll give you my attention. Well, so that's just that. What are you going to do?
I'll be honest with you, though. It's the same thing with politics. The politics in martial arts is very reflective of politics in government. It's like a need to seek power and control and to dominate the conversation and to not allow other opinions or viewpoints to have any kind of space. And we see that a lot in politics nowadays, which is really scary across the board. But it's kind of the turnoff for me, martial arts. Also, when I meet, like when I have a student come into my school, I've had a different schools all over. I had one in California, Atlanta, all over the place. Now I just moved to Florida. I'm going to eventually open one up here. But when I have a student come in, the first thing I do is ask them, what's your background? And I've had students come in and say, I had a student come in, literally, I'm like, how much, because he had called, he said, I want to try your class. And he tells me everything, goes, I'm really curious to train. I'm really curious this. And I know myself, I spar with my students. I test myself against my students when they're at the level to do it. So the first thing I ask him is, I always ask, what's your background? And, you know, like, tell me a little bit about yourself, how big you are, everything. He goes, well, I used to compete in K1. I had like a 7-1 record in K1 with 7 knockouts. I compete at Lumpini Stadium. I'm an X-Force Recon Marine. I'm 6'1" and I'm 225 pounds. And I'm like, okay, and what's your body fat? He's like, about, 8-9%. I'm like, okay, all right.
My first question with that would be, what do you need me for?
Well, he was the most open-minded. I helped his game like crazy. He wanted to improve his Muay Thai, and the way he improved his Muay Thai was with a lot of the tricky little Filipino stuff I was pulling off on him. I play that hand tapping game, and then I hit you. And yes, he was much better than me in certain areas, but I can improve his game for him. I was still good enough to be a coach. He could kick my ass in a fight, but I'm still good enough to be a coach for him and improve certain areas of what he's doing. It's such an open mind. But here's the thing. When I had students, I wanted to learn certain aspects of striking or punching. I did not have too big an ego to say I should teach it. I would say, hey, Jason, come on up here. You show the technique. You're better at that move than I am. I am not the know-it-all of all aspects. And because it's my class, because it's my style, doesn't mean that you can't do this better than me. And so I'll use you because my end goal is to make my students better, not my ego, not to prove I'm the best. And so a lot of schools, and I mean, I've trained at different schools where it's like, I'm a very good clinch fighter. My whole background is clinch fighting, just stylistically, and they know this. And then it's like, well, we need a guy to teach clinch, but because it's a traditional style and they're not comfortable that I don't have a higher belt, I can't teach the clinch because I'm not a black belt in that style. I might be a 5th degree black belt in Filipino martial arts. I might be a black belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu, which is all true. You know what I mean? I might have trained in these other systems. It doesn't matter. I'm not a black belt in their style. Therefore, I can't know more about clinch than them. It would be an insult to their style. But if I was a black belt in their style, I could teach the clinch, even though their style doesn't teach clinch. You know what I mean? It's just such a weird, it's such an ego-driven, it's so stupid, it's politics, and it's like, end of the day, I don't care about any of that. And, it's just, I don't care. American politics is going
I'll give you credit. I'm going to tell you, you don't care about that. That's legitimate. A lot of people say that to come across humble. That was the reason I told you that I did your video response because of the way you presented it. And I told you you have this great balance to where you're not very arrogant at all and you're very respectful in your delivery, but I wouldn't come to your school to test you, right? I don't feel like, oh, I can go down to Ian's school and I can walk all over. I don't feel that way about you. So that's you're ahead of the game in a good future for martial arts, which is why that I want to plug your content and drive everybody over there. Really quick again, share, where can people find you? How can they support you? How can they check your works out and all that?
If they type in, I don't know if you'll find it if you just search Inside Fighting, but if you type in like does Shotokan, let me just look at some of the titles of the videos. You know, that I'll just name some of them. I don't know what I named them all, but that's how they come up here. I'll just
Well,
pull
your
some
video
up.
is on my page. It's like the pinned video. If people come up to my YouTube channel, they're going to see me responding to your video specifically.
Okay, amazing. Yeah, that would definitely be the best way, because I probably shouldn't have named it Inside Fighting because there's 40 other channels.
And it's got the best catchy opening theme song on the planet. So, hey, listen, thanks for taking the time out today. I think this is one of many conversations we'll wind up having. This is fun. I'm going to start this with guys and gals that I think that have great contributions to the martial arts community. Have them come on. Let's have a conversation, because I'm tired of just this puck so and then fuck so. I'm tired of that shit. We'll do more of that, but we're gonna have some conversations. So Ian, thanks for joining today. Inside Fighting is the YouTube channel. It's a superb martial arts channel. I think that should be get more explosive growth. If you guys follow me, you got to follow Ian. Show him some love and some support. Thanks so much, man. And we'll do this again, guys, soon. See you soon.
Thank you, brother.